10 spine-chilling encounters in Appalachia, revealed secrets of cursed and sinister hauntings. Sarah stood in the doorway of her new home, the old farmhouse looming like a shadow in the fading light. This was meant to be their refuge, a fresh start far from the hustle and chaos of city life. But this place felt heavy, as if the air was thick with the weight of secrets. The wood-paneled rooms, soaked in the musty smell of mildew, whispered of forgotten stories, not all of them pleasant. Outside, the rusted fences leaned like tired soldiers that once protected a vibrant farm now choked by overgrown weeds. It wasn't just the house that felt broken, so did she. Sarah tried to bat away the impending dread, focusing on her children instead. Jake and Lily were exploring, laughing as they ran through the cracked front yard, their small, innocent minds unaware of the shadows creeping around them. But when darkness enveloped the mountain tops and the sun dipped below the horizon, the shadows began to flicker and dance ominously. Strange whispers crept through the cracks of the old house, blending with her thoughts, her tired reassurances morphing into something sinister. What was that? Jake's voice cut through the silence, his eyes wide as he pointed to the corner of the room, where long shadows seemed to twist. Sarah shrugged it off, shaking her head as if to clear the fog of worry. It was just an old house, she told herself, just an overactive imagination. But inside, her heart raced, beating out an anxious rhythm. Later, while making dinner, the unease settled deeper in her bones. Each clank of a pot sent chills up her spine. Then the doorbell rang, breaking the thick tension. It was Mrs. Hargrove, their neighbor, with a pie. She smiled sweetly, but there was something off in her gaze. It lingered too long on Sarah, darkening as it wandered to the corners of the creaky house. "Lovely place you have here," she said, though her voice dripped with something unsettling. "Others say it's cursed, but I'm sure you'll be just fine." Cursed. The word sat heavy like a stone on Sarah's chest, mingling with the rumors she had heard whispered in the town square. And when the next morning came with the gruesome sight of mangled chickens in the yard, Sarah felt the weight of the town's secrets crash down on her. As days passed, whispers of a local witch echoed in hushed tones around her. She overheard snippets of conversations that curdled her stomach about bloodlines entwined in darkness, about the witch who made pay the blood of the past. She tried to brush it off, tried to convince herself it was folklore meant to scare children, but it was hard to ignore the hollow smiles of the townsfolk, their heedless warnings. "Best not stir up the past," they would say, and each time Sarah felt a creeping chill settle in her bones. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Scrutiny turned into obsession. When she confronted the sheriff with her fears, she was met with gentle condescension. Jesus, was she losing her mind? Every night was the same. The whispers danced warmly then turned frigid as she drifted to sleep. And Jake and Lily, she found them waking, sweat-soaked and trembling from nightmares about an old woman with withered hands and hollow eyes that reached for them. Everything escalated when she found her grandmother's hidden diaries filled with spells and dark declarations of vengeance. What had her family been tangled in? Just as she grasped the horror threatening to engulf her, a thunderous knock resonated through the farmhouse. Dread poured through her as a dark figure loomed outside the window, beckoning her into the night. The witch who cursed her bloodline. Would she step into the shadows to save her children, or would she be swallowed whole by the curse of her ancestors? The choice loomed over her, as suffocating as the echoing whispers. The figure outside shifted, barely visible in the shroud of night. The breath caught in Sarah's throat as the reality of her situation crashed upon her like a wave. The dark silhouette seemed to murmur soft invitations, riddles tangled in malice that echoed between the trees. Heart pounding, she gently backed away from the window, glancing toward Jake and Lily, who were still asleep, innocent, blissfully unaware. stepping cautiously into the dim hallway, Sarah felt the coolness of the wood floor seep through her bare feet, sending chills up her spine. She leaned against the wall, feeling as if it might collapse under the weight of her anxiety. The whispers escalated into a low hum, vibrating through the air, clawing at her sanity. Could they be trying to warn her? Or were they taunting her, feeding off her fear? What if it's all true, she thought, a dark pit forming in her stomach. What if the town's stories weren't just old wives' tales? What if she was called to fulfill some twisted destiny? A creaking sound pulled her back to the present. It was rhythmic, almost deliberate. It came from the attic, the very place she promised herself she wouldn't venture. With each creak, her resolve wavered. Jake and Lily, they needed safety. As the hum intensified, she made her decision and hastily climbed the stairs that led to the attic door. The air thickened as she stood in front of it, her heart drumming wildly. Pushing the door open, an overwhelming wave of musty air hit her. The room was cloaked in darkness, boxes piled haphazardly, remnants of lives lived before her. The light from the hallway faded behind her, cocooning her in shadow. She reached for the old lantern hanging on a nail. As the flame flickered to life, its glow barely chased the darkness away, revealing a dusty, forgotten world. Then, on a dusty trunk, an object shone bright amid the gloom, a mirror, its surface marred with age but still offering a faint reflection. Drawn to it, Sarah felt an urge deep within her, beckoning her closer. As she wiped some of the dust away, the air turned colder still, and the whispers coalesced into clearer words, her name chiming like a warning. Sarah. The voice echoed, dripping with malice. Startled, she dropped the lantern, shattering the fragile silence with a sharp crack. The flame wavered, its light struggling against the encroaching shadows. Panic surged through her veins. She fumbled for the lantern, but the shadows thickened, swirling around her like a living thing, threatening to pull her under. She could feel the temperature drop, chilling her skin, as if ghostly fingers brushed against her neck. Her heart raced. Jake! Lily! She screamed, desperation clawing at her throat. What if it was too late? Frantically, she turned toward the attic door, but it slammed shut before she could reach it. Something had taken hold of her, and she wasn't sure if it was the witch or if her own bloodline was rising against her. Just then, in the mirror, something stirred, flashes of faces, twisted in agony, eyes wide with terror. They called out, their voices mingling into a haunting choir. Help us, don't let it take you. Something was happening behind her. She felt it in her bones, like a whisper crawling deeper into her mind, pulling her toward that cursed mirror. What were those faces? As dark figures began to materialize, pushing against the threshold of her reality, Sarah realized the truth. This was no mere curse. This was a reckoning, a calling for retribution, one she could neither escape nor ignore. And then she knew. The past, her past, was bleeding into the present, demanding judgment. In that moment, her fate intertwined with the dark legacy waiting just beyond reach. Sarah. Jake's distant voice pierced through the tumult. But it felt so far away. She had to choose: would she face the truth and find a way to break the curse, or would she surrender to the shadows, letting them claim her forever? The mirror trembled, and as the darkness surged closer, she felt time slipping away. Please, she whispered, willing the weight of her ancestors to lift. But it pressed on her, relentless. What would she decide, and could she even survive the answers lurking in the darkness? And then, with one last flicker of the lantern, the attic plunged into complete blackness. The darkness enveloped Sarah, thick and suffocating. A low growl echoed in her ears, stirring panic like a storm. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe. The whispers swelled into an angry chorus, clawing at her with every word. Sarah! Don't let it take you! They cried, as if warning her of a fate worse than death. The mirror loomed before her, an ominous presence thrusting out dark memories and forbidding images. The faces twisted, each expression a mixture of despair and eternal longing. She stumbled back, feeling the wall bite into her back, its coldness snaking up her spine. But there was nowhere to go. Jake! Lily! She screamed again, her voice cracking under the weight of terror. Each desperate cry for help echoed back at her, swallowed by the shadows that danced with malicious glee. The attic felt like a living entity. It breathed with hunger, waiting for her resolve to shatter. Then, in a moment of surrender, she reached for the mirror. Her fingers brushed the cracked surface, and a jolt coursed through her. Images flashed before her eyes, a woman in a tattered dress, her face twisted in anguish, reaching out to her from another time. Run! She seemed to scream silently, but the weight of history held Sarah still. Suddenly, the lantern flickered again, a dying star in the grip of the void. Shadows wriggled closer, and she felt icy tendrils reach for her. Each grasp like a warning, urging her to escape the fate set for her by the witches of time. Could she fight against what was destined to happen? The attic door rattled violently, and she could hear faint pounding Jake's voice fighting against that barrier, frantically trying to break in. Sarah! Hold on! I'm coming! A wave of hope surged through her. She had to hold on. Jake! She shouted, pushing against the oppressive weight of the shadows. The whispers faded to a faint hum, a reminder of the chaos threatening to swallow her whole. As she pulled her hand away from the mirror, she saw a familiar face among the tortured souls, a little girl with tears streaming down her cheeks. Slowly, the girl raised her finger and pointed to something behind Sarah. A sudden chill crept down Sarah's spine. She spun around, heart racing. A dark figure, grotesque in its shadowy form, stood just behind her. Its eyes burned with a hellish light, tracking her movements with predatory precision. She could feel its gaze bore into her, pulling her into the depths of hopelessness. Join us, it growled, voice echoing with 1,000 lost souls. The room spun violently as if caught in a hurricane of dread. She needed to escape, to fight, to wrestle back control from the clutches of fate. In a moment of desperation, she turned once more to the mirror, its surface reflecting not just her fear but also strength, a legacy she had inherited. Please let me go, she uttered, her voice gaining volume, the echoes sharpening into a fierce declaration. She could feel the light from the lantern struggling, fighting alongside her will. The air around her pulsed as she gathered the rest of her strength. Let me break this curse. Just then, a blinding flash erupted from the mirror, illuminating the attic like a summer dawn. The dark figure recoiled, shrieking in rage, while the whispering faces in the mirror surged forward, pulling Sarah into their collective fury, demanding redemption. Sarah closed her eyes, surrendering to the roar of light surging through her veins, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The twisting shadows coiled tighter, daring her to falter. Sarah! Jake's voice broke through the chaos, the sound resonating like a lifeline. I'm here. With her mind racing, she realized she had to choose. Would she stand and fight to break free of the curse, or would she let the darkness swallow her whole, like so many before her? But as the light and darkness waged their war around her, Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Something was happening greater than her reckoning. And in that moment, she couldn't tell if she was being pulled deeper into despair or reborn in rebellion. Through the chaos, a new voice broke the tumult, calm yet resolute. The time has come, Sarah. You must choose now. What would she decide? And could facing the truth save her family or doom them all? The shadowy figures closed in, their hungry whispers rising again, ready to claim their due. The light from the mirror intensified, pulsing like a heartbeat, and the shadows, furious and desperate, receded momentarily, allowing Sarah to grasp the weight of her decision. Do I fight or do I fall? Her heart raced, each thud echoing in the cavernous attic. Sarah! Jake's voice pierced the dimness again, strained but filled with unwavering determination. Just a little longer. Tendrils of shadow lunged toward her, hungry and clawing. The mirage of the woman in the tattered dress floated behind them, her mouth moving silently. Run. The urge to flee competed with a strange pull toward the mirror, its surface crackling with raw energy. The faces within twisted and morphed, pleading with her, warning her of the true cost of her choice. Unbeknownst to Sarah, the choice she faced was not simply between light and darkness but between her family's past and their unspooling futures. Pain shot through her fingertips, the mirror searing her flesh, a more palpable pain than the emotional torment surrounding her. She gasped, blood mixing with the tears streaming down her face. "Stop!" She screamed at the dark entity, channeling every ounce of her fear into defiance. The shadows halted, their movements jerking as if stung by her will. "You think you are strong?" it hissed, the voice wrapping around her like tendrils of ice. "You don't know what you're facing." But she did. Each moment spent here gnawed deeper. It was the ghosts of the broken, the tales of the damned. The women who had ruled this land had left scars that wrapped around every corner and every crevice. "I know more than you think," Sarah shouted, the words cutting through her fear. "I carry their pain, but I also bear their strength." The dark figure reeled back, a flicker of uncertainty passing through its fiery gaze. That uncertainty sparked the flicker of hope inside her. It was a wedge. She thought of Jake, of Lily, and of the legacy they deserved. "What do you want from me?" she demanded. "Your soul," it replied flatly, a grin splintering its horrifying visage. "To join the horde, like the rest." "No," she spat, shaking. "I want to become another pawn in your sadistic game." In a moment of clarity, she felt the mirror respond, resonating with her fury. She stepped closer, the visions flashing vividly, each face crying out, each story pleading for freedom. The light bent and warped, bridging the ancient resentment with her fierce resolve. "Together, we can break this cycle." The mirror blazed, illuminating the room again. The whispers grew frantic, echoing off the walls. "Sarah!" they wailed. "Don't betray us." But she couldn't turn back. Every face, every voice depended on her battling this terror deeply rooted in the family's bloodline. She drew upon their shared anguish, igniting it into strength. "Then I choose to fight," she declared, raising her hand. A shield of fury erupted from her, formed by the light of the mirror, stunning the encroaching shadows. The echoes of the trapped lingered, their cries transforming into an anthem of defiance that reverberated throughout the attic's wooden slats. With a blinding flash, she surged forward, propelled by the light and the voices of those awakened by her bravery. They wouldn't be silenced. Not today, but then, as she broke through the tendrils, the figure lunged forward, enveloping her in a cloud of darkness, shrieking wildly. "You are lost." The shadows clawed at her skin, cold and biting. She felt the weight of desperation tightening around her chest. Jake's muffled attempt to break through the door became a distant echo. In the flurry of chaos, something flickers behind her, a new opening, a chance, but what it held was uncertain. "You must keep going no matter the cost." With the shadows clawing ever closer, Sarah felt her heart race again, knowing another choice awaited her. Would she break free, or would the darkness swallow her whole again? What lay within that shimmering light was a path unknown, yet filled with both promise and peril. The haunting chorus of the mourning souls echoed in her ears as she turned to face it, leaving her future hanging by a thread. The moment Sarah crossed into the light, everything shifted. The air turned electric, buzzing with untold stories and anguish. It was a corridor of memory, threading her through the fabric of time and space, yet thick with the scent of fear. As she moved, the shadows behind her shrieked in frustration, their cries echoing around her like a terrible cacophony. "Sarah! Don't look back." Jake's voice broke through the noise, pulling her focus forward. She could faintly see him, a silhouette against the darkened door, struggling against whatever force held it shut. Before her, the swirling light opened into a vast expanse, one haunted by flickering images that danced like fireflies, glimpses of lives that had come before. But they twisted, always twisting, morphing into faces of agony and despair. "What is this place?" she gasped, a chill creeping up her back. The air felt heavy, and she clutched her arms tightly, as if that might keep her warmth. A ghostly figure emerged from the light, a woman clad in glowing white. Her face bore deep sorrow, yet her eyes blazed with strength. "You are not alone, Sarah. You are destined to take your place among those who fought before you," she said, her voice strained yet powerful. Fear gripped Sarah's heart. "What do you mean? I didn't want this." "Your family's history binds you," the woman replied. "You are the key to breaking the suffocating chains. But time is running out." "What chains?" The question screamed inside Sarah's head, but a guttural roar erupted behind her as the shadows surged, recklessly clawing toward her. The dark figure pulsed, pulling the energy from the very walls, and she turned back, panic freezing her. "Keep moving," the specter urged. "Fight. You must embrace the pain and the power within." With urgency, Sarah stepped forward, pushing through the energy. Each step was a labor, as if wading through thick mud. She seized the strength of those trapped souls, letting their sorrow fuel her. She felt them all, those voices ascending through her heart. "There, you must find the source." The woman pointed toward a faint gleaming shard on the horizon. It pulsed like a heartbeat, resonating with her own. It was drawing her close, but the shadows twisted and screeched like a hunted thing. "You cannot escape." They lunged, jagged claws barely missing as she darted past. A cold sweat broke out on her forehead, and she could almost taste its bitterness. "I won't give up," she shouted defiantly, remembering Jake, Lily, and all those she loved. They had to be safe. But just as she reached toward the shard, the dark figure cloaked over her, its breath suffocatingly cold. "Your desperation will be your undoing," it hissed, wrapping her tighter in its coil. With a surge of anger and resolve, Sarah fought back, forcing the memories of her ancestors, their pain, courage, and cries into a single cohesive emotion. "I am stronger than you," she screamed as the glow intensified, pushing the shadows back. The darkness shuddered, faltering. The piercing wail echoed against distant walls as it collided with her protective light. But victory was fleeting. The energy flickered, the light dimming. Suddenly, the room transformed again. The walls turned a sickly shade of gray, the sound of crackling thunder rolled ominously overhead. Sarah looked into the distance, and the shard became clearer. But fear crept back in. What if it was a trap? "Sarah. Can you hear me?" Jake's voice filtered through the distortion, but it changed, twisted by despair. "You have to." She couldn't hear more, the shadows closing in again, hungry for her resolve. "Trust in the light," the woman urged. Just then, something shifted behind her, an ominous presence gathering strength. What she feared most was still hunting her down. She had to move, but the choice weighed heavily. Was the light a portal to freedom, or the doorway to doom? The darkness surged, and in that split second, she felt her tether to the world snap. Would she embrace the power or be consumed? In that moment, the ground trembled, and Sarah could only scream as everything around her shattered. What she didn't see rising from the corner of her eye would change everything. A new shadow, deeper than the rest, stretched within the flickering light. The ground quaked beneath her, and Sarah's world exploded into fragments of jagged light and darkness. Instinct kicked in, fight or flight, yet there was nowhere to run. The new shadow loomed larger, absorbing the light around it, its presence smothering and heavy like grief. "Sarah!" The woman's voice echoed, but now it was tinged with urgency, urging her to escape, as if she had only moments left. The shadows shrieked, a concert of despair, each sound a reminder of what she was up against. The pulsating shard flickered, brighter, then dimmed, caught in a deadly dance between light and dark. Was it a sanctuary or a trap? Heart pounding, Sarah surged forward. She couldn't allow fear to swallow her whole. Every fiber of her being screamed to reach that glimmer, to unleash whatever power lay dormant within her. "Embrace it!" the woman shouted, her form shimmering like silver mist. You must choose. The looming darkness swirled closer, tendrils of shadow licking at Sarah's ankles, threatening to drag her down. She kicked her legs, each movement a fight against the suffocating weight around her. I'm done running, she cried, summoning every ounce of willpower left. The memories surged again, her ancestors, their battles, their pain. She felt their agony mix with her own, a tempest of emotion that ignited a burning flame within her chest. Sarah, a whisper came, soft yet persistent, through the crackling air. She knew that voice. Jake. Please, you have to hold on. The ground rumbled, the air crackled with tension. She couldn't falter now. The sky twisted above her, dark clouds gathering, a storm brewing somewhere far beyond this cursed realm. Using that voice as her anchor, Sarah thrust her hands toward the shard. Her fingers brushed against its warm surface, and the world erupted in a burst of brilliance. The light surged around her, forceful and pure, pushing against the consuming darkness, but the shadows fought back, howling, thrashing against her. They clawed and scraped, desperate to drag her under again. You're out of your depth, they hissed, dark and twisted, filled with malice. No. I want to let you win. Sarah screamed as she let the light expand, a shield against the malevolence. The memories of pain transformed into a force of hope, hope against despair. Right when she thought she'd gained the upper hand, a piercing scream echoed, one that sent ice coursing through her veins. It was no ordinary scream. The shadows recoiled briefly, revealing glimpses of tortured faces, souls lost in this abyss. In that moment of vulnerability, the shadows regained their momentum, rushing her with ferocious intensity. Sarah stumbled back, the light flickering, threatening to be extinguished as an overwhelming dread gripped her heart. Unleash your power. The woman echoed in her mind, probing her deep, and then, in the swirling chaos, Sarah felt it, a pulse of energy, rooted in every fiber of her being. She could hardly breathe, fear and doubt clawing at her very essence. But this was not a moment to relinquish control. With primal fury, she gathered all that radiated from her spirit, flinging it outward. Light erupted from her hands like a supernova, a radiant explosion that sent splinters of brightness racing through the shadows, but suddenly, the energy flickered, a heartbeat, struggling to maintain its pulse. The shadowed monstrosity roared, a terrifying sound filled with rage and anguish, and in the light, Sarah saw what she feared most. The fullness of her heritage stood manifest before her, twisted in the dark form that stared hungrily. Sarah. There was desperation in Jake's voice now, a plea cutting through her resolve. You're not just fighting for yourself. But what if his words were true? Could she bear the weight of their legacy? As the ground shifted again, two rifts formed, one towards the shattered light, the other into the expanding darkness. And it dawned on her that choice could be the answer, or her undoing. Time slowed as she prepared to decide, breathless and filled with dread. Then, with violent urgency, everything began to tremble, and a new wave of shadows surged forth, threatening to swallow her whole. Choose wisely, whispered a voice, but in the chaotic frenzy, she didn't know which way to turn. Would she embrace her light or let the darkness claim its due? As the shadows lunged one last time, Sarah could only brace herself against the tide. Before she could even register her choice, the shadows surged forth, thick and clammy. They latched onto her, wrapping around her limbs like icy chains, pulling her deeper into the encroaching blackness. Panic clawed at her throat, but she fought desperately against the suffocating embrace. Help me! She screamed, but the darkness swallowed her voice. The pulse of the shard flickered dimly, lost in the sea of shadows. Despair flooded her mind, and for a fleeting moment, she almost gave in. Would it be easier to let them take her? To abandon the fight and escape into the void? Her heart raced, each beat echoing in the heavy silence, but then Jake's voice broke through her uncertainty, a beacon of hope. Remember who you are, he urged, his spirit interwoven with hers amid the chaos. The warmth of his encouragement wrapped around her like a lifeline. How could she abandon her own legacy? The generations before her fought for something greater, and she couldn't betray their sacrifices. With renewed determination, Sarah reached deep inside, past the cold tendrils of shadow threatening to extinguish her light. She focused on that tiny flicker, her connection to the shard, allowing it to grow, expanding it until it radiated out in blinding waves. The shadows recoiled, snarling in frustration, but she pressed on. "You think you can claim me?" she whispered fiercely. "I am not yours to take." As if in answer, the darkness writhed and twisted, a mass of tortured souls clawing at her. Faces emerged from the blackness, grim, sorrowful, haunting. They spoke without words, their pain reverberating through Sarah's very bones. "Sarah, save us," they implored, desperation saturating the air as their shadows merged with the malevolence around her. "Not like this," she shouted, horror playing across her features. Events of the past echoed in her mind, tales of lost souls trapped in shadows, eternally seeking rescue. The realization struck her hard. They needed her power not to escape the darkness, but to harness it against the very thing that sought to consume them all. "I will save you," she snarled, harnessing everything she had. The light surged again, a billowing flare of energy radiating from her core, pushing back against the shadow tide that wanted to drag her down. It was exhilarating and terrifying, a tug-of-war of existence, yet, as she pushed back, she felt the darkness fight harder, twisting around her like a vice. The weight of what she was fighting consumed her thoughts. This wasn't just her battle, she was feeding the desperation of those around her, their fears igniting the shadow's rage. More. The pulsating energy within her roared, growing brighter, threatening to spill over. Just then, the ground heaved beneath her, and she lost her footing, tumbling into an unseen abyss. All was lost, or was it? In that moment, she felt something release within her, a realization that could shift the tides. "I am the bridge between both worlds," she cried out against the sweat-soaked darkness. The light exploded outward, fierce and shattering. It ignited something within the depths of the abyss, stirring echoes of those lost souls, but even as the light surged outward, a shadowy figure loomed at the edge of the shimmer. A being of darkness, its features indistinguishable yet recognizable, watching her with deep-set eyes that glinted like shards of glass. It was the harbinger of her fears, something she had faced in nightmares, revealing a connection deeper than she imagined. "Join us," it hissed, voice slick and serpentine, weaving through her thoughts. "You could wield far greater power." Sarah felt the pull of that promise, complicating her resolve. "You'll never win," she shouted defiantly, but doubt crept in. The line between hope and despair started to blur. She could see the faces of the trapped souls warring against the darkness, agony etched into every expression. But among them, one face broke through, not twisted by anguish but shining with clarity, her own ancestor, the one who fought for her lineage. "Choose, Sarah, your light or your legacy," it urged. Offering the hardest choice of all. As the shadows coiled tighter, she felt trapped between the legacy she was supposed to uphold and the fear of what would happen if she embraced the encroaching darkness. And then everything went silent, the echoes of tortured cries faded, leaving nothing but stillness. As she hovered on the brink, the weight of her decision loomed larger than the darkness itself. What would she choose? Would she embrace the heavy cloak of her past or forge her own path with the light? With every heartbeat, panic bloomed anew. The tension stifled her breathing. "Which will you take?" The shadows chuckled, swirling tighter around her, and she could almost taste the fear stirring in the air. The choice became clear, yet terrifying. With the shadows screaming for her surrender, the light illuminating her path, time stood still as the pulse of destiny began to beat louder. The pulse quickened, and Sarah felt the churning of the abyss beneath her like a living creature, a beast yearning to swallow her whole. The darkness thickened, a palpable force suffocating her resolve. She had to decide, and she had to decide now. "I am more than just my ancestor," she shouted, pushing back against the shadows that twisted like a storm around her. Her voice trembled but rang with defiance. It was the last ember of her spirit igniting into a flame. She refused to let the darkness dictate her fate. An icy laugh echoed in her mind, each syllable piercing like glass. Foolish child. You think you can stand against the inevitable? You think they still care for you? The figure from the shadows slithered closer, the murky outlines of its body coiling like smoke. Let us show you the truth. Visions crashed over her, clamoring for dominance, intense flashes of her ancestors, their faces twisted in anguish as they battled the same darkness. They fought valiantly, but one by one, they fell silent, their spirits absorbed into the void. No, she screamed, clenching her fists as she fought to fend off the despair. They deserve better than this. Yet the whispers grew, deriding her resistance. You will join them soon enough, the shadow toyed, creeping closer, darkness wrapping around Sarah's feet, dragging her down. Panic surged when she felt the cold seep into her bones, rage ignited. You think you can take me? You will not have me. Sarah's light flared, emboldened. The shard pulsed violently in sync with her heart, rippling with energy, pushing back against the encroaching darkness, but the shadows retaliated, thrumming deep with ancient power. Suddenly, there was movement, a surge beneath her, then the sensation of being pulled. Not down. Up. The energy shifted, throwing her towards the surface, towards the light. With one final scream of desperation, Sarah stretched her arms wide, the force of her own light surging past her, beckoning the lost souls to join her. The faces of her ancestors blurred into waves of light, a spectral army rising from the depths, their united voices blending together like a haunting chorus. We are not alone. We will fight. The shadows recoiled, relentless in their pursuit, but now they faced not one, but many. The amalgam of light clashed against the darkness, a war erupting into cosmic tumult, a battlefield of frantic horror and desperate valor, and then, like a string snapped, the light surged again, breaking through the darkness like the sun chasing away a storm. Sarah hurtled upward, carried by an unseen force, the solid ground rushing to meet her as the shadows screamed. The air shimmered with fractured energies of light and dark, and as she crashed back, it felt like returning from the dead. Stumbling backward, she fell onto the ground with a gasp, the oppressive thickness of the shadows dissipating. The world was quiet for a heartbeat, the chill of fear still clinging to her skin, then it hit her like a ripple in a pond, something echoed back from the darkness. The shadowy figure reared its head, merging with the shadows that lingered just beyond her vision. It was not gone. It would return. The battle was only beginning. Sarah, a whisper curled through the air, soft and malevolent. You'll never escape. Her heart raced, pounding like a drum of war. Adrenaline surged through her veins as she realized the price of her victory. Behind her, the remnants of the lingering shadows leaned closer, eager to strike. The darkness hadn't vanished, it was merely waiting for its chance. In the stillness that followed, a familiar voice broke through the tension. You did well, but we must prepare. This was just a skirmish. Jake stepped into view, emerging from the shadows as if he had been lurking there all along. His expression was grave, shadows cast across his face as uncertainty filled his gaze. What did you see, Sarah? He urged, his voice barely above a whisper. We don't have much time. They're coming for you. Her breath caught, realization dawning. The fight was far from over. The weight of the shadows shifted once more, a silent promise of chaos to come. And as a cold streak shot up her spine, Sarah understood there was no refuge left. Only the remnants of her light stood between her and the tide of darkness that loomed, ready to devour her once more. What are we going to do? She stammered, panic tightening her chest, knowing with every fiber of her being that the battle ahead would demand more than she ever envisioned. In the chilling silence that enveloped them, Jake's eyes locked onto hers, and she realized one terrifying truth. She could not fight this alone, and help may come from the most unexpected of places. Were the lost ancestors truly on her side, or was there some dark bargain yet to be struck? The air thickened with uncertainty, pulse quickening. The next move would define everything. How far would she go to protect her legacy? Sarah felt the ground beneath her vibrate like a warning siren, the echoes of past battles still resonating in the dying light. The chill of the shadows crept closer, hungry and relentless. Jake's presence, once a comforting anchor, now felt weighted with dread. "We need to move," he hissed, his brows knit tight with urgency. What if they come for us? What if I can't fight?" Panic tightened her throat, a ball of fear clenching her stomach. Each moment of stillness felt like an invitation for darkness to strike. She glanced at the shadows slumbering just outside their fragile light, their malevolent whispers growing louder. "We have to take it to them," Jake said, his voice low and fierce. "There's a place where we can gather our strength. A shelter, if we can get to it." His words sent a jolt of defiance through her. What use was shelter against shadows that could swallow them whole? "Where?" She breathed, fighting the urge to bolt, to put distance between herself and the encroaching doom. "Not far, but it's dangerous. We'll have to move quickly." The darkness stirred in response to her fear, something like laughter rolling in the air. A chill swept over her, as if the shadows were already tasting her despair. "Then let us go." She nodded, steeling herself against the creeping dread. With every step she took, the shadows seemed to curl closer, hungry for her strength, eager to rob her light. Sarah and Jake darted through the thickets, the gnarled branches snapping and clawing at their skin as if to remind them that no part of this world felt safe. The path grew winding and wild, wrapping them in a forest so sinister it was as if the trees themselves were complicit in the darkness. "Keep your eyes open," Jake murmured, scanning the murky surroundings. "They can manifest anywhere." "We mustn't forget." A rustle in the underbrush stopped him cold, freezing Sarah's blood. The air around them thickened, the shadows surged like a living tide. They weren't alone. A figure flitted between the trees, half-hidden and hauntingly familiar. His heart raced as he grabbed Sarah's arm, both of them sliding behind a row of thick shrubs. "Did you see that?" she whispered, her breath hitching in her throat. "It's not safe here," Jake responded, the urgency rising in his tone. "We need to keep moving." But Sarah couldn't pull her eyes away from the figure. It stood still for a moment, the shadows coiling like a cloak around its body. It turned, and for a heartbeat, their eyes met. Brimming with an echo of pain and determination. "Fate has a way of bringing us back," the figure mouthed, though no sound escaped. Just as quickly as it appeared, it retreated deeper into the woods, leaving them with only the impression of familiarity and fear. "Who was that?" Sarah gasped, the chill of recognition settling in. Something inside her tugged, a connection deeper than the shadows around them. "It doesn't matter," Jake insisted, pulling her along. "We must go. The longer we linger, the more time we give them to regroup." They ran, heartbeats pounding like war drums, shadows tight at their heels. What awaited at the supposed shelter loomed in her mind. Was it sanctuary or another trap? As they neared what seemed like the edge of the tree line, a cacophony erupted overhead. Dark wings shadowed the moon, obscuring their path. "Fly away, little moths," a voice thundered from the sky, twisted with malice. "Into my web I will collect you first." The shadows danced wildly, calling her name again, the voice now a venomous tease circling her thoughts. "Run!" Jake shouted, urgency slicing through her confusion. But Sarah felt rooted, fear locking her in place against the encroaching darkness. The battle was not just against the shadows, it was against the very core of who she was becoming. What had she awakened deep within the woods? As if in response, the shadows shimmered. A low rumble grew, an omen that made her blood freeze. Was sanctuary ever truly ahead? Or was the true darkness only just beginning? "Sarah, now!" Jake pulled her forward, but she already felt the answer lurking in the shadows. Waiting to pounce. She took a step, heart pounding, but not toward safety. She was being pulled into the deep places of the world where secrets lived, twisting and lurking. And from that darkness, secrets of her ancestors began to surface, each one screaming for a reckoning. Which would she choose to embrace, it was no longer just about fighting the dark but understanding it all. Sarah's heart pounded like a war drum, each beat echoing in the stillness as she and Jake crashed through the underbrush. The shadows writhed around them, hungry for what little light remained. "We have to reach the shelter," Jake urged, urgency twisting his features. The darkness slithered closer, and Sarah felt a grip of fear tighten around her throat, squeezing her resolve. Suddenly, the forest opened up, revealing an ancient stone cabin nestled among the trees. Vines slithered around its walls, growing thick and unkempt. "This is it," Jake breathed, pulling her inside just as dark tendrils lashed out from the trees, gnashing like hungry wolves. As they stepped into the cabin, the door slammed shut behind them. The sudden stillness hung thick in the air, and Sarah glanced around, her breath catching in her throat. Faces swirled in the wallpaper, their eyes pleading, their mouths moving without sound. She could feel the history of pain embedded in the very foundation. "Is this really safe?" she whispered, doubt creeping into her mind. "It has to be," Jake replied, his voice strained as he leaned against the door, panting. Shadows clawed at the wooden walls, but they held firm for the moment. In the flickering candlelight, Sarah glimpsed a collection of old books strewn across the floor. Memories of her grandmother's diaries flashed in her mind, a torrent of dark magic echoing across the pages. "Maybe we can find something here," she said, moving toward the scattered tomes, trying to push past the clenching fear. Carefully, she picked one up, dust swirling as it cracked open. "The ritual of binding," she murmured, feeling the air grow heavy. This was the answer, the link between her bloodline and the darkness stalking them. "We need the words," Jake interjected, peering over her shoulder. "If we can bind the shadows, perhaps we can stop them." Suddenly, an awful screech broke through the calm, shattering the fragile moment. "They've found us!" Jake exclaimed, backing toward the door as dark shapes twisted outside, their claws grasping for entry. "Must concentrate," Sarah yelled back, drowning out the cacophony with her focus. She turned back to the book, flipping through pages that felt like they whispered dark secrets. Then there it was. Her finger traced the incantation, the words wrapping around her tongue like a vine. "Jake! We need to stand together right now." He joined her side, eyes fierce as shadows wickedly danced across the cabin walls, eager to break through. "Say it with me," she urged, and their voices unified as she began to chant, the ancient language spilling from her lips, echoing through the dimensional rift that had come to life. The cabin trembled as they spoke in unison, their combined energy pulsing. Light flared around them, battling against the inky shadows pressing through every crevice. The walls of the cabin groaned under the strain. "Trust the power within you." The spectral woman in white, the essence of their ancestors, poured herself into Sarah's mind, filling the void of despair with certainty. A surge collected at her core, and with every word they spoke, Sarah felt the bond with her ancestors strengthen. The weight of their history, pain, and hope resonated through her, transforming into a force that seemed to thrum in time with the darkness outside. The shadows shrieked, a visceral cacophony of their collective malice. "You think you can keep us out?" they howled, but Sarah was no longer afraid. "I am my ancestors," she shouted, her voice shaking the very ground as light exploded around her. With one last incantation, she extended her hand toward the door, channeling everything she knew into the force she deconjured. The light exploded outward, engulfing the shadows, sending them screeching back. But as they withdrew, they remained a terrifying presence, swirling in the darkness beyond. "I can't hold it. They're too strong," Jake cried out, desperation creeping back into his tone. "Together!" Sarah shouted, pushing her will forward, feeling the essence of those who fought before them. As Jake placed his palm over hers, she felt electricity course through them, a spark of defiance, their bond ringing true. Tendrils of shadows swirled menacingly around the cabin, pressing against the barrier they decreated. The air crackled, and with every heartbeat, Sarah felt the unity of her family behind her. "Honor their pain, and let their strength guide us." She cried, and the light intensified, the shadows battling against its brilliance. With a roaring blast, the darkness retreated. But it was only a momentary victory. "This is just the beginning," a voice hissed, echoing from the depths of the forest. As the light waned, the cabin came alive with flickering shadows. "This isn't the end," Jake warned, his grip tightening on her hand. Sarah took a deep breath, drawing in the power of her legacy. "I will face it," she breathed, determination hardening in her chest. "For every voice crying for freedom, I will fight." Suddenly, everything changed. The shadows shifted, and a chill swept over them, the familiar feeling of dread clinging to Sarah's thoughts. "They will keep coming back, but not today," she whispered fiercely. "Then we have to prepare ourselves," Jake replied, his voice steadfast. They made a pact there, under the weight of their ancestors' spirits, knowing they had emerged stronger for the fight that lay ahead. The shadows encircled the cabin like hungry wolves, but now, they faced a united front. Sarah felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. "Together, we can break this cycle," she said, casting one last defiant look at the encroaching darkness. "Together," Jake agreed. They would prepare, not just for the descendants but for the countless souls ensnared in the shadows. Dark curses could end, their legacy rewritten anew with every act of courage. And as the spirits of the past lingered, Sarah knew this was their moment to change fate forever. As she closed her eyes, she felt the weight of history pressing down. "Let go of fear," she whispered fiercely to herself. This wasn't merely a fight against evil, it was a battle for their very existence, one she was determined to win. With unwavering resolve, she stood alongside Jake in that shadow-laden cabin, ready to reclaim their power, fierce and unyielding against whatever might come. And so, they prepared for the inevitable second wave, knowing the light still flickered within but ready to confront the darkness once and for all. But as the shadows encircled the cabin, now ready for the return battle, a sense of urgency filled the air and it beckoned them into a new phase of their journey. Now, this is your moment to take action. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And for the love of all that is sacred, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic conclusion. True fans don't wait even one more second. Show your support now.